Right. Thank you everyone for tuning in to my show, Money Talks CKSM. Thank you for tuning in to WGAC 98.3 FM, your voice, your music, your station. So the topic of today is really talking about buying versus renting, being an owner versus someone who rents, and just talking about all the little tips and tricks, some of the things that you should debate on, some of the major decisions that you need to make in order to make this ultimate decision. But before that, as I usually do, is a market week. And so for this market report is as of market close February 10th, 2017. And so the stock indexes posted a strong week of gains as the Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ each achieved record highs. Long-term bond prices also rose last week, with the yield on the 10-year treasuries falling 6 basis points. Favorable fourth quarter corporate earnings reports, coupled with the president's proposal to lower taxes for businesses, helped drive equities. And so the market is still doing pretty well. There's no need to panic. There's no need to fear anything because we're still in pretty good shape. The price of crude oil remained just about the same compared to the prior week, and so we're still doing pretty good, at least from a market perspective. The stock market it's basically been going up ever since the year started. So the Dow Jones is up 2.5% so far this year. NASDAQ is up 6.5%. S&P 500 up 3%. Russell 2000 up 2%. And so the market is still doing pretty good. And with that being said, we'll go into the topic for today, which is mainly buying versus renting. So owning a home versus renting a place. And as we all know, basically owning a home is essentially the American dream. So basically everyone in America, or mostly everyone, someday wants to own a home. And to go into it, so the tax code really favors those who own. You know, whether you're a business owner, a homeowner, a stockholder, anything that has to do with ownership, the tax system will favor you. You know, why is it that you can't deduct rent payments when you rent a place? But why is it that you can deduct property taxes and mortgage interest and even mortgage insurance premiums? You know, why is it that stockholders, if you lose out on the stock, you can just write it off and just call it a day? And why is it that when you own a business, you get more tax breaks than a regular W-2 employee? So the tax code heavily favors those who own. And buying versus renting is a heavily debated topic. This is something that has been debated for probably over 100 years. It's truly something that it really depends on the individual in order to make this ultimate decision of whether you want to buy or rent. And renting is viewed mainly as just throwing money away. This isn't necessarily true, mainly because of the time value of money. What you can ultimately do is, since there's no down payment and you may have lower rent payments, you can ultimately invest this difference into either, let's say, the stock market. You can invest it into something that will yield a profit basically over time. And so that's one way to look at it, is that the lower rent payments and the fact that you don't have to pay a down payment means that you can invest the difference. But guess what? People don't invest the difference. They see this as extra money that they can spend. There's a lot of people who have very bad spending habits. And so they just automatically spend any extra money that they have every month. And what you can do though instead is the money that you're saving, instead of buying a home, you can just invest it, or you can save it for maybe a bigger goal, maybe starting a business or saving for retirement. And so that's one way to look at it. And then another thing is that some people they just find renting to be more advantageous than buying, just because of the flexibility that you have as a renter, the ability to be mobile and move around a lot. And then also buying and selling a home, and this is from experience, buying and selling a home is very, very, very stressful. It is extremely stressful, extremely frustrating. You must have patience in order to truly go through this process. I haven't gone through the selling process yet, but I have gone through the buying process, and I can tell you it is one of the most stressful things you can ever do. And what you ultimately do is you need proper planning and education before you make this ultimate decision. There's a lot of things that you should consider. Consider the price of the home, the amount of your down payment, the current interest rates, the current property tax rate, your income tax bracket, how long you intend to live in the home, and the amount of rent that you're currently paying. And so now let's talk about the advantages of renting. So with renting, you have non-financial and financial benefits. So with non-financial benefits, it's basically easy to change places as long as you don't break the lease. So typically leases are about a year. And so once the year is up, or sometime during the year, you can either renew your lease, or you can tell the landlord, hey, I don't want to live here anymore. So it's good for people who relocate for work pretty often. Maybe they travel every here and there. And it's also good for people who just consistently need a change of scenery. So if you like to move around a lot, if you like to travel places, if you don't like being in one spot, this is the typical millennial traits, then renting is probably a good idea for you. And then also, there's no need to hire someone who does repairs. You can simply call the landlord, and everything will get taken care of for you. I can speak on experience in that. I recently had my toilet repaired because there was a flooding issue, and I had to pay for that. So I don't get the benefit of having a landlord basically to cover that expense. So that was one of my lessons that I learned, is that I have to cover all of my repairs now that I own a home. And then also, there's no need to maintain the property. Let's say something damages with the property, just call the landlord, they'll fix it. No need to shovel snow, no need to do any of that stuff. The landlord is going to take care of everything because it's their property, they care about it. You're just there to live and enjoy the place. And then, of course, there's no fees as long as you don't damage the property. So don't throw crazy parties where you're inviting 1 million people to put holes in the wall or put anything crazy. As long as you don't damage the property, there are no fees, no need to worry about maintaining the property. And now we'll talk about financial benefits. So with financial benefits, as I said before, there's no need for a down payment, no need for closing costs, no need for property taxes, no need for homeowners insurance, although you might want to have renter's insurance. And also, there's often a security deposit and even maybe 1 or 2 months of rent that you have to pay in advance. So these are all things that you should keep in mind when making this decision on whether to continue renting or to become a homeowner. And then there's no need to purchase new appliances. When some people move into a new home, they might have to buy a new refrigerator, a new oven, a new dishwasher. There's no need for any of that if you rent, because your landlord is going to take care of all of that. And then you can generally rent for less than the monthly cost of owning a place of owning a home. Although in Chicago, rent prices are very high. As a matter of fact, according to Trulia, the average or the median rent per month in Chicago is $1,500. So you might be better off actually owning a home than paying $1,500 on average, this is the median, per month. And now let's talk about the disadvantages of renting, also known as the advantages of buying or owning. So rent payments, as I was saying before, are not tax deductible on your tax return. Remember, the tax code favors those who own, not those who rent. So mortgage interest and property taxes are tax deductible if you itemize, also known as the Schedule A on your tax return. And one thing, this is very important, but the effective cost of owning a home just may be lower than it appears to be compared to renting. Because if you're able to deduct property taxes and mortgage interest, then ultimately you never, in a way, you're not really paying that much for that stuff. You know, you're not paying the full face value of it. You're paying only a portion of it because you get this tax deduction. So although your mortgage might be $1,500 a month and $500 of it is interest, you might only be paying $1,250 because maybe $250 is going to come back in the form of a refund. You know, that's just an example. Just different things to keep in mind. So ultimately, what you might find out is that although your mortgage might be $1,500 a month or $2,000 a month, and your rent, let's say, might be $1,000 a month, ultimately you might find out that your mortgage is actually closer to that rent, that $1,000 a month, than you think, because of the tax write-offs that you're getting. And so that's one thing to keep in mind. Always calculate after-tax costs, after-tax rate of return. Don't focus on pre-tax. Don't look at things from a pre-tax perspective. Always consider the tax implications. Do it after tax, and this is where some tax planning can definitely come in handy for you. And then we'll go into the next segment and really talking about more about the advantages of buying. So we talked about renting, now we're talking about owning. And so with owning, here are the non-financial benefits. Owning a home is the American dream. Everybody wants to own a home. At some point in your life, you are going to own a home. I hope you do, because it's a beautiful thing. You know, and this is what I've personally been feeling, is a sense of security. It's so peaceful owning a home. I have such, peace of mind. I truly cherish, value the property, to actually call it my own and say that I own this property. This is an absolutely beautiful thing. And so you don't have to worry about a landlord kicking you out, because maybe he plans to sell the property or something crazy happened. You don't have to worry about anybody kicking you out, because at the end of the day, this is your property. You own it. You're the actual owner of this property. Your name is on the property. So nobody can tell you anything, really. And then another thing is that you don't have to deal with increases in rent prices. And as I was saying before, in Chicago has one of the highest rent prices in the nation. So you don't have to deal with all of that. And if you lock in, and here's another important thing, try to lock in your mortgage rate, especially if you're buying a home right now, like today. Lock it in. Interest rates are only going up. I mean, you can refinance it in the future, but hey, who knows? Interest rate might be at 3% benchmark. Right now, the benchmark is between 0.5% and basically it's 0.5% to 0.75%. That's the benchmark interest rate right now. So that's the lowest rate that somebody can charge you, or a lender would charge you. So who knows? The benchmark might go up to 3%, 4%, 5%. The economy is booming. And one thing that I always tell people, if you're not booming with the economy, then you're doing something wrong. But the economy is booming. It's or at least the stock market is booming. The economy itself is growing at a fairly decent rate, just about 2-3%. But ultimately, what I'm trying to get to is that, there's really a sense of security when it comes to owning a place. You don't have to deal with any of this increase in rent prices. Rent prices are sky high right now, especially in Chicago. There's no need for that. And you don't get to deduct anything as a renter. Basically, you can deduct nothing as a renter. And then another thing to keep in mind is that although your property taxes can go up in the future, you can always appeal your property taxes. So a lot of people don't know this, but you can actually appeal your property taxes up to 3 times a year in Illinois, at least in the Cook County. And if you need help with that, I can always help you out as a tax advisor. I can definitely help you appeal your property taxes. Basically give you a sort of idea of if you're paying the right amount, and see if we can look into ways to provide you some savings. But that's one thing. Always keep in mind these financial, non-financial benefits. Always keep in mind after-tax rate of return. Don't look at pre-tax. Anytime you get an investment, anytime you get an opportunity, look at the after-tax. Don't look at it pre-tax. And then to talk more about the advantages of owning a home are the financial advantages. Tax deductions. Always keep in mind the taxes. Mortgage interest, property taxes, fully tax deductible if you itemize. Also, amounts paid for qualified mortgage insurance may be tax deductible. And so a lot of people don't really know this, but so when you buy a home and you put a down payment of less than 20%, you actually have to get mortgage protection, basically. Let's say you default on a mortgage and the lender hasn't gotten enough money from you. To them, 20% is like, okay, we have some skin in the game in this loan now. So if you put a down payment of less than 20%, you have to get mortgage insurance. And the premiums that you pay each month, potentially, most likely, will be tax deductible. But in the future, it might be going away, though, unfortunately. But it's just something, at least for the present day today, as we're looking at it today, your mortgage interest or your mortgage insurance premiums are tax deductible. Keep in mind that once you hit 20% equity within a property, or a 20% down payment, there is no need for mortgage insurance because the lender has some skin in the game when it comes to the loan. And then here's another very important point. So when you buy a home, let's say you want to sell the home. And so if you wait 5 years to own the home for 5 years, live in it for at least 2 years, you can get what's known as the homeowner's exclusion. And what the homeowner's exclusion does is basically it provides you with a tax, I guess it's not a write-off, but basically you get to exclude your capital gains. So when you sell a property, any real estate that you sell is automatically capital. It's a capital, it's treated as a capital asset. But basically when you sell it, you get to write off or you get to exclude up to $250,000 if you're single, or if you're not married filing jointly. But if you're married and filing jointly, you can actually exclude up to $500,000. And remember, there are 1,400 more financial benefits for traditional married couples than non-married people. So that's something to keep in mind. And this is one of them. You get $500,000 that you get to exclude. Let's say you buy a property for $500,000. You sell it for $1 million after 5 years. You've lived in it for 2 years. That $500,000 gain, IRS never sees it. They don't know anything. You don't know anything. It's excluded. And you just made $500,000 pure profit after tax. So that's something to keep in mind. And then here's another benefit, is that as you're paying your mortgage, hopefully on time, you get what's known as equity within a property. So as a homeowner, you can borrow against the equity in your home using either a second mortgage or a home equity line of credit. The interest, and this is another important point, the interest on a home equity loan of up to $100,000 is also tax deductible, regardless of how you use the money. Let me repeat that. The interest on a home equity loan of up to $100,000 is tax deductible regardless of how you use the loan. So what do people do? Of course, people have to hack into this system. Many homeowners use a home equity loan to consolidate other high-interest debts, such as credit cards, make repairs and improvements, maybe to sell the property in the future, and even fund a child's education. Can you believe that? One way to save for a child's education is through your own home, because you're building equity within a property. And so what does this do? You can create leverage. You can actually build wealth off of the wealth you already have. And so this is one way, and I'll be talking about a concept known as compound interest in the future. But basically, this is really a way to leverage compound interest. And really what compound interest is, Albert Einstein said that it's the most powerful force in the universe, basically. But compound interest is like interest on top of interest. So interest, let's say you get a home equity loan for 5% interest. But you know for a fact you can make a killing in the stock market. You can gain 10% each year, guaranteed. You know exactly how to do this. And so let's say each month or each year you're getting 10% and you're only paying 5%. So that 10%, you take the difference of 5%, you invest that. So each month, like, you keep investing it, boom, investing it, boom, investing it. So let's say you're doing dividend reinvesting, and you're always investing, reinvesting. Let's say you do this for 30 years. That can be a nice chunk of change. As a matter of fact, if you invested $5 every day for the next 40 years, growing at a 9% interest rate compounded daily, you can have $700,000 in your account in just 40 years. And I currently do that, actually. But another thing to keep in mind, basically lenders will generally allow you to borrow up to 80 to 90% of the value of your home. So remember, as you're paying off your mortgage, you get some skin in the game. And so you're able to build equity within the property and get to take out a loan basically on your own property. You can do the same thing with life insurance. As you're building cash value, you can take out a loan on your own policy, basically pay yourself back. You can fund a child's education. And so ultimately what you're doing is you're creating wealth with already established wealth, if that makes sense. And then another thing is asset appreciation. So typically homeowners, the value in their home increases. So, let's say for example, property values have increased by 5% in Chicago. Let's just say for last year, just an example. This is not actually true, but so 5%, that asset is appreciating every year. That value is going up, and also remember, land never depreciates. And so your home is always, let's say it's always going up. Let's say maybe a crash or something in the market happens. It goes down a little bit. Unfortunately, what people do is they sell at this point. They tend to sell when things are going down, when you're supposed to be buying more. So remember, the market is just a cycle. It's just a cyclical effect. And so ultimately what you can do is you can really benefit by just holding on to the property. And if you want, sell it when the market is actually high, not when it's low. And so your value is more than likely going to increase over time, just like the stock market. I mean, this is proven evidence. We're at the highest point in the stock market right now. As of right now, as I speak, stock market is basically at its highest, it's at its peak ever in history. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And remember, when you bought this home, you barely use any of your own money. So let's say you bought a home, $500,000. It goes up to $700,000 in the next year. And guess what? You can sell it, make a $200,000 profit. Now you might want to hold on to the property for 5 years instead of just selling it. Then again, $200,000 profit, tax at a decent rate doesn't sound too bad. But if you want to avoid taxes completely, just hold on to the property for 5 years. Make sure you live in it 2 years, or at least the last 2 years before you sell the property. And the IRS never sees anything. So that's something to keep in mind. The value in your home is basically always going to go up. Always. And then You can, and basically, ultimately, what you're doing is you're gaining a profit off of somebody else's money. And that's how the rich keep getting richer. They borrow somebody's money at a nice interest rate. They go out and invest it. They pay it back over time, and they're building wealth as we speak. And this is a strategy that I personally use. I remember, and I'll talk about this more in my compound interest segment. But basically, sometimes what I do is I barely pay cash for anything. Instead, I use a 0% interest credit card. And then as the time comes up for the interest to start, that's when I really start paying it. Or I make sure the debt or the balance on the card is eliminated right before the interest is about to start. And then I just keep repeating the cycle. Boom, boom, boom. Money is being made. I'll definitely get into more into that at a later time. But that's what compound interest is essentially. You should never get rid of an interest-free debt. A lot of people don't like having loans, but you can truly profit off of loans. As a matter of fact, I know somebody who got rich without hardly ever using their own money. They just used somebody else's money, borrowed it legally, used somebody else's money at a very low interest rate, and they just kept investing it. Boom, compound interest, boom, your account grows and grows and grows to the point where you're like, you don't even need anybody's money now. Now you have your own money, and you just continuously build. Boom, boom, boom. And you just keep going. So to conclude, whether to rent versus buying, it really depends on different factors. So many factors. But always remember the tax benefits. Always remember, the tax code is in the favor of those who own. Those who are owners, business owners, homeowners, stock owners. The tax code will always be in your favor. And that's why some of these politicians don't pay taxes, because they know the code. They know passive income is the best source of income. There's little things like this. So one of the most important people that you can have on your team is a tax advisor, somebody who knows the tax code. And I'll share a secret. I personally haven't paid federal taxes in the past 2 years because I know the tax code, legally, of course. But also, always keep your goals in mind. Maybe you're not ready to purchase a home. Maybe you want to move for work in the future. Me personally, I love Chicago, so I'm going to be here for the rest of my life, basically. And so I don't ever plan to sell this home. I'm just going to keep running it. Compound interest, compounds over time, and just keep building on that equity. And then typically, in my opinion, of course, after all that I've been saying, I'm in a favor of the owner, somebody who buys a home. It might not be for you, but I know it's for me. So it really depends on the type of person you are, and you can truly build wealth just by owning stuff. Own it, and then create equity, borrow against it at a very low interest rate, and then just keep building wealth. Keep riding the journey. And ultimately, make sure you pass it down to the next generation so that they can continuously build. Because if you don't pass anything down, you won't get remembered for anything. And that's something very important to keep in mind. If you leave this world with nothing, you'll be known as nothing. And so that's really it for the presentation. And next week, I'll be talking about buying versus renting a car. So we talked about a home. And next week we'll be talking about a car. It's a heavily debated topic out there once again, but it's similar benefits. But there's some minor, very few differences, and they're actually important enough to warrant its own separate presentation. And then the week after that, I'll be talking about compound interest. Remember, interest, money growing on top of money. The power of leverage, the power of borrowing, the power of credit cards. So credit card companies take advantage of people. Now it's time for us to take advantage of credit card companies. So I'll be teaching you a little bit about that. How to leverage a 0% interest credit card. I mean, it's just unbelievable that they would do that. 0%, what is it, 6, 12, 15, 18 months. I mean, that is insane. You can make a lot of money within that period if you play the game right. See, the reason why they do the 0% is they try to trap you to ensure that we're not the ones being taken advantage of. We're the ones that are taking advantage. So, as Albert Einstein said, compound interest, what is it, the eighth element? I forgot the exact quote, but basically, if you understand it, you will earn it. If you don't, you will pay it. If you understand it, you will utilize credit card companies. If you don't, credit card companies will utilize you. And as we know, credit card debt is one of the most, it's kind of disturbing. How people just take a credit card, just swipe it, and just basically never pay it back. And now they're stuck in this trap where what should have been $1,000 balance is now $14,000 in just 10, 15 years. So now compound interest is working against you when you could have been taking advantage of compound interest. Keep in mind, if you're an owner, this is one thing you can take advantage of. It's the compound interest effect. So always keep that in mind. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight to WGHC 98.3 FM, Money Talk, Sikasem. We will be talking more next week, the following weeks. And I hope you guys really enjoyed the show. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me directly. Phone line is 773-679-7198. You can catch me on social media. Just type in Jeff Badu, JEFFBADU. You can email me, jeffbadu@gmail.com. And I'll always be here. And I definitely thank Mr. NK for starting this radio station, making this movement. I really hope my community is taking advantage, and I hope to do great things in the future. And this community will be on top.
You're already doing great things, my brother, and I thank you for also responding to our community request to expose our professions in our midst. So you're already doing great, and we thank you for that. For another great segment next week. Next week they're not there, bro.
Buying versus renting a car instead of a home.
Hey, sir. All right, Jeff Badu for you next week. Yeah, besides, yeah, you train come on.